I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Palestinian groups call for clashes with Israelis. 50 Polish heroes who saved Jews from the Holocaust call for Israel and Poland to come together. And Israeli scientists may have just found a way to reliably detect prostate cancer. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. A judge and a public prosecutor are fighting back after being accused of colluding in a high-profile case that's connected to the Israeli prime minister. They're vowing that they will remain in their positions no matter what. Judge Ronit Poznansky-Katz and the legal advisor to the Israel Securities Authority, Shacham Shavit, are involved in Case 4000, where there are suspicions that the owner of Israel's Walla News network swayed coverage of the Israeli prime minister and his family, all in exchange for benefits for his other company, Bezek. On Sunday, a series of WhatsApp phone messages were leaked to the public, showing the judge and the public prosecutor as they coordinated their positions just ahead of a remand hearing for the suspects in the case. The alleged collusion was immediately condemned and both were put on leave, but both Poznansky-Katz and Shacham Shavit claim the messages weren't meant to collude, but were rather the only way that they could exchange logistical information before the hearing. Both claim they lack secretaries to send along the very same information that they were caught discussing. A formal inquiry has been ordered to investigate their behavior, but the judge and prosecutor deny all wrongdoing. This comes just as reports are revealing that two central suspects in the Bezek probe themselves have been busy messing around with their text messages. Nir Hefetz, the former spokesman for the prime minister, and the owner of Walla, Shaul Elovich, reportedly banded together and deleted incriminating messages that linked the favorable coverage of Netanyahu received on Walla to new policies benefiting Bezek. Both will remain in custody until next week. Palestinian groups are allegedly calling for clashes with Israeli soldiers and settlers next Friday as part of a day of, quote, popular rage. The violence is supposed to be a form of protesting the U.S. administration's decision to not only recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, but to also relocate its embassy to the city. Representatives of the Palestinian National and Islamic forces reportedly met up in Ramallah to discuss where to initiate clashes. They're calling on Palestinians to gather at, quote, all points of friction, including settlements and military checkpoints. They're also calling on Arabs and Muslims around the world to stage similar protests against American policy. The U.S. State Department has just announced that the U.S. Embassy will be moved on May 14th from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, just in time for the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence. The move has Palestinian leadership fuming, calling on the PLO bodies to suspend all relations with Israel and to boycott all American delegations visiting the West Bank. Last week, a U.S. delegation of New York council members and civil society groups were attacked by Palestinian protesters with eggs when they attempted to visit the Palestinian Center for Policy and Research in Ramallah. The last surviving Christian Poles who helped Jews during the Holocaust are speaking out to Polish and Israeli authorities in order to prevent even more of a diplomatic crisis. Israel and Poland have been fighting ever since Poland passed a new law that criminalizes people who say that the Polish nation was complicit in the Holocaust. Now, 50 Poles who risked their own lives for Jews have written an open letter to the Polish and Israeli governments. They consider themselves to be the last survivors of more than 6,700 Poles who were recognized by Israel as righteous of the nations, hiding Jews from the occupying German forces. The remaining survivors mostly assisted their parents in sheltering Jewish people and say they oppose divisions between Poles and Jews, calling for a future based on friendship, solidarity, and truth. The Polish prime minister is thanking them for standing up, and Polish officials insist that their new law won't be used against anyone who speaks the truth. Rather, it will only target those who try to defame Poland with lies. Well, Israel is still maintaining that the law is an attempt to whitewash the actions of Poles who killed Jewish people during World War II. There's been a resurgence of anti-Semitism in the Polish public amid the crisis, and Poland's Jewish community has expressed much fear. Speaking of rising anti-Semitism, according to a new report by the Anti-Defamation League, the number of anti-Semitic incidents in the United States has doubled in the last year. Here to help explain the report and its findings is Dr. Ilana Heidemann, the executive director of the Israel Forever Foundation. All right, Ilana, so do you think there is an increase in incidents, or is it more likely that people are just starting to report it to the authorities?
I think that a combination of factors are taking shape here. People are feeling more free to express their negative feelings about Jews, whether or not it is couched in politics or their other agendas that they might be embracing within the upheaval that's happening in American society. And I also think that many more Jews are feeling an obligation to report the incidences that they are experiencing or are hearing about happening within their own families. For example, parents reporting on incidents that are happening with children.
Now, is more vocal extremism within the United States maybe one of the reasons behind this rising anti-Semitism that we're seeing right now?
The vocal aspect of it is simply the expression of some underlying feelings that may have been in existence for many decades even. But as soon as there's a green light offered where people are given the opportunity to express themselves more freely with this extremist hatred, resentment, fear, whatever the original emotion might be, I think that that is why we're seeing it become so prevalent in also the mainstream reporting of these incidents. And of course, I think that the social media has given a vocal platform for anyone to be able to express this hatred and to have it legitimized because it echoes other arguments that are being offered very predominantly, I might add, by the extreme parties on both sides, the left and the right. We see this happening, for example, with the Zionism feminism argument, as well as the Zionism racism argument. So Israel is also being integrated into the rationale as to why an increase of anti-Semitism is taking place and why it's legitimized.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us with this information.
Absolutely.
2 Arab Israelis from the West Bank have just been charged with plotting an Islamic State-inspired attack on Jewish targets in Israel. ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with the report.
Thank you, Natasha. Yeah, the 2 suspects were allegedly planning to attack in an ISIS-styled suicide attack, either the Temple Mount in Jerusalem or a Jewish synagogue where one of the suspects used to work here in Tel Aviv. But some other areas were also considered. Now,
the suspects were Arab Israelis, from what I understand. What can you tell us about them?
Well, the first suspect is a 20-year-old Mohammed Jabarin. The second is unnamed because he's a 16-year-old minor. Both suspects are from the Arab-Israeli town of al-Fahim, as you mentioned, and they will be charged with membership in and recruitment for a terror group, contacting the enemy during wartime, incitement to terrorism, destroying evidence, and a few other major charges.
Now, like you said, the suspects are from al-Fahim in the West Bank, where several terrorists in recent months, or not in the West Bank, I'm sorry, within Israel, where several terrorists in recent months have been from. Do they have any connection to one another?
In some cases, yes. In other cases, it's highly likely and considered, but not confirmed as of yet. For example, Mohammed Jabarin's brother was arrested in September for membership in a terror organization. There was a 20-year-old Imad Jabarin from al-Fahim who was arrested in January, also connected to thwarted attacks. And then actually the July Temple Mount shooting attack, where 3 Arab Israelis, all from al-Fahim, all actually named Mohammed Jabarin as well, were responsible for killing 2 Israeli guards.
And that attack is ultimately what prompted the heightened security that we saw over the summer around the Temple Mount.
The cameras and the metal detectors, which were later removed.
All right. Well, is there any other details that you want to give us about this specific case, or just generally?
About this case, no, but actually in a separate, also ISIS-related account, there was a 40-year-old arrest, the arrest of a 40-year-old Valentin Myslevsky, who he is, according to the Shin Bet, the first Jewish Israeli suspect who was going to perform an ISIS attack. He was going to join ISIS in Syria, and he was just arrested for that and charged for 3 years in prison.
Wow. All right. Well, I think we can all at least agree that Israeli security is doing a good job of kind of rooting these types of people out. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, disappointed Christian tourists are still praying outside the doors of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Church leaders have shuttered the holy site as part of a protest against a new Israeli tax policy and a proposed law to seize church land.
We came here all the way from Chicago, 10,000 miles, hoping to see where Christ died, and we're so disappointed that, that they closed unexpectedly like this.
The Israeli government is trying to protect residents in Jerusalem whose homes are on land that until recently was owned and leased to them by churches. They could soon be without homes because church leaders have been selling that land to private investors to erase massive debts. Israel wants to seize control of the land so that doesn't happen, but Christian and Catholic officials say the government doesn't have the right to take away their main source of income, real estate, and they're fighting back by refusing public entry to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
And this is a move that says, look, the churches play a role here that can't be ignored, and don't reduce us to a commercial entity or a real estate agency. We have a very important spiritual role in this land.
But the Israeli government isn't finished. The mayor of Jerusalem is demanding the churches to pay back 650 million shekels worth of taxes for their commercial buildings, saying that even though the churches themselves are exempt from paying taxes, quote, commercial buildings are not exempt from municipal taxes regardless of their ownership, and that Jerusalem's residents shouldn't have to bear or subsidize this huge debt. Now the European Union is getting involved.
We hope that a solution can be found quickly. Jerusalem is a holy city to the three monotheistic religions. This special status and character of the city must be preserved and respected by all.
Well, the mayor of Jerusalem is standing his ground and took to Twitter to respond, saying, in Jerusalem, all are equal under the law, Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, as is the case for all of Jerusalem's churches, synagogues, and mosques, is exempt from municipal taxes. There's absolutely no change in this regard.
Next week, dozens of business leaders from all over Israel will gather for the annual Go for Israel conference being held here in Tel Aviv. And joining us to tell us more is Samuel Blank, the director of Catalyst, which is organizing the conference. Thanks for joining us. All right, so first of all, tell us a little bit more about this conference. When is it going to be held?
So the conference is happening next week on the 5th of March. And we're really looking forward to it.
Beautiful. And so what can we expect to see there? I understand that there are Israeli companies coming from across the country, but will there be any international companies as well? Or?
So the focus of the conference and our goal really for the conference is to showcase the best that Israel has in terms of innovation across all the sectors that we do best. So the companies that are presenting there really are Israeli companies. But we bring investors and partners from all over the globe to engage with them at the conference. Amazing.
So can you give us some examples of, perhaps some of the innovations that we're going to be seeing at this year's conference?
Sure. So, what's special about the conference is that it's not focused on a single industry. It really covers all the sectors of innovation that we see in Israel. So we're expecting to see companies from across life sciences, TMT, there'll be AI, Internet of Things, cybersecurity, of course, as well.
Okay, very cool. And the investors who are coming, how do they sign up for the event?
So they can go to the website and sign up. There are limited spaces available still.
I can imagine that would be the case. Everybody wants to see where to put their money, right? So what would you say makes this conference different from some of the other business conferences that we see around the country?
Sure. I think there's a few things which stand out about our conference. The first of which is its longevity. It's been going for almost 2 decades. This is the 18th conference that we're holding, which I think is pretty unique in terms of conferences in Israel, especially in this field. The other thing which, as I said, about this conference which makes it special is that it covers all fields. So, we see a lot of conferences that cover, say, cybersecurity or automotive.
But this is more general.
This is
and another thing for our viewers to know is that you're also going to be holding a similar conference in China too, which is a big deal, right?
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this conference, and I'm going to see if I can check it out myself. All right, controversial Knesset member Oren Chazan may have been suspended from the Knesset for 6 months, but he's finding himself a way to stay in the public eye. Only this time, his latest fiasco doesn't have anything to do with politics. He's starring in a new music video. Confused? Don't worry, we are too. Khazan will be making his dancing debut in the video for The Sun Star by the boy band Eve and Lear, where he will be starring as a teacher who turns his classroom of teenagers into a disco. Khazan even takes a selfie with the statue as the students arrive for his lecture, reminiscent of the selfie he took with U.S. President Donald Trump during the American leader's visit to Israel. Remember that? Anyhow, Khazan seems to be very excited about his music video debut, saying he always dreamed of being a teacher. The scandalous lawmaker entered the Knesset in the last election and has become known for his wild antics. Shortly after going into politics, Israel's Channel 2 News revealed that he had hired prostitutes for his friends and experimented with crystal meth, all while managing a casino in Bulgaria in 2013. Khazan has also been indicted for assault and publicly mocking a disabled colleague. But even though he's been temporarily banned from the Knesset multiple times, he clearly seems to be finding a good way to spend his time. Prostate cancer is the second most common cancer among men around the world, but today the main method for testing for it remains very controversial. Here's the good news. Israeli scientists say they are a step closer to developing a better method to screen for the disease that will take the uncertainty out of the process.
Today, men must screen for increased levels of prostate-specific antigens, or PSAs, in the blood. But here's the issue. Studies have shown that elevated PSA levels can sometimes show up years before cancer even develops, meaning lots of men face unnecessary biopsies and a whole lot of anxiety. That's why the American Cancer Society even questions whether the benefits of the current screening process outweigh the risks. Well, now the Israeli company Micromedic Technologies has a new tech called Cell Detect, and according to scientists, it can detect or rule out cancer in urine samples much more accurately than the PSA test. Researchers at the Kaplan Medical Center in central Israel carried out a clinical study with 59 urine samples, revealing that Cell Detect has a 75% specificity rate. In other words, it can detect cancer in 3/4 of the people who have it. Because the current diagnostic testing that exists is so unreliable, these clinical study results could end up saving millions of lives.
On July 21st of 2014, during Operation Protective Edge, the IDF's Egoz unit was hit by 3 explosions in the heart of the Gaza Strip, killing 22-year-old Sergeant Yuval Dagan. Just a few months beforehand, a devastating earthquake in Nepal led to the death of another young Israeli, Or Asaraf. Now their families and friends have found a way to honor both of their memories by establishing a special agricultural youth farm in the Israeli desert. And joining us now is Yonatan Kam, the founder of the nonprofit Nitzan. All right, Yonatan, so tell us a little bit about why you decided to create an agricultural youth farm to honor your friends.
Yuval and Or were in the same unit as me in the army. We were involved in projects to help youth from difficult backgrounds. When both of them were killed, I decided one way I could realize their vision and commemorate them was through project help young people who drop out of institutional system. Yuval and I talk about a safe place for youth based on the desert therapy method.
Yeah, so it's interesting. How will this center work? Like you said, this is a desert therapy method, right?
Yeah, the farm is intended to absorb youth who are struggling with day-to-day life activities and are about to drop out of the school or have already dropped out of school. The farm is based in the desert and it can take 8 to 9 young people at the same time. We try to rehabilitate these teenagers from 2 to 3 months through agriculture and desert work.
It's interesting because you're working with them on adjusting back to everyday life, right? And the goal is to kind of make sure these kids return to school or any institution that they were at before they came. So it's really reducing the dropout rates. That's the main goal here. So is the facility ready? What have you guys got so far?
We have already completed the primary planning for the educational programs. We also just finished our first successful pilot with teenagers who graduate and returned back to his original school.
Oh, great. which is great that there was this successful case, because the current farm that you guys built was entirely by volunteers and through donations from around the country, right? But you're having an issue with your budget, right? You can only accept a few youth at a time. So what do you need to be successful?
Exactly. Currently, we have completed the majority of the planning and main construction. We have also received all the necessary approval from the government. The estimate cost of rehabilitation per youth is about $7,000, and an additional $5,000 needed to operate the agriculture work.
So you're raising money right now so that you can help kind of complete the construction process as well and operate with more kids, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, for those who are interested in donating to this amazing cause, you can either email Nitzan in the super below, or you can call him. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Ever heard of the Israeli soccer team Beitar Jerusalem? Well, it's one of Israel's biggest and most historic clubs, but its fans often make the news for their racist and violent behavior. Well, it turns out their conduct has had an opposite effect, leading a group of the team's fans to walk away from the controversy and form their very own club.
We got to this point that it was feeling that if you're going to the stadium, it's like going to a football match with the underworld, with criminal organization, very racist, very militant, that even use violence against us, against the fans.
Around 4,000 fans formed the club Beitar Nordia Jerusalem in 2014. The move came in protest against Beitar Jerusalem's scandalous reputation, which has always been associated as a home of Israel's right-wing supporters. For the past 10 years, the group's ultra supporters, known as La Familia, have been known to chant racist songs against Arabs and attack other club supporters. Their violent behavior has caused the club significant financial damage, and even worse, a global reputation as one of the most racist clubs in the world. Beitar Jerusalem is also the only club in the Israeli Premier League who has never signed an Arab. The main reason? It may sound crazy, but the fans won't allow it. Well, the creators of Beitar Nordia Jerusalem are making sure that that doesn't happen in their new club.
בית"ר נורדיה זה המועדון היחיד בארץ שקם נגד הגזענות. אני מאוד מעריך את הקהל של בית"ר נורדיה, שבאמת ניסו לשנות מבפנים בהתחלה לאורך כמה שנים. ראו שזה לא צלח להם מבפנים, ובאמת לא הרימו ידיים והקימו את בית"ר נורדיה כמובן.
One of the first things the club did was sign an Arab player. Supporters of Nordia Jerusalem pride themselves in being open to everyone and preaching coexistence.
במשחקים באים קהל שזה משפחות, ילדים. כמובן שהכל פה טהור, ללא קללות, הקהל רק מעודד.
The club currently plays in the 3rd division and is hoping to face Beitar Jerusalem in the 1st division in the near future. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. In honor of Israeli soccer star Eran Zahavi's record-breaking deal, today's word is si, meaning record or peak. You can either likvoa si, or set a record, or lishbor si, meaning to break a record, but the only si'im, or records we really care about, are the ones set in Israel, of course. So here are some top si'im that made our list. The late former President Shimon Peres holds both the si for the oldest sitting head of state and for hosting the largest online class. Over 10.5 thousand participants attended, by the way. Up next, the oldest seeds ever germinated were found on Mount Masada in the 1960s, and they produced 3 ancient species of date tree. The seeds that made the si were over 2,000 years old. Quite a si. And last but not least, the si, or record for tallest Lego tower, might soon go to the city of Tel Aviv, because the 36-meter tall structure is now being verified by the Guinness World Record Association. See, we're full of si'im. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be slightly cooler with a chance of rain and a low of 50 or 10 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow will be sunny, though, with a comfortable high of roughly 68 or 20 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.48 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.